All right, hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for being here and tuning in out there. Grateful to you all for joining this reading, which will be tremendous. So thank you both for being here, and thanks to all of you. My name is Mike Wendt. I'm the programming director here, and I just have a few things to say, and then I'll turn it over to the poets, which of course is why we're all here. First thing, I'd like to begin with a land acknowledgement and say that we at Woodland Pattern acknowledge that here in Milwaukee we live and work on traditional Potawatomi, Ho-Chunk, and Menominee homelands along the southwest shores of Michigami, part of North America's largest system of freshwater lakes where the Milwaukee, Menominee, and Kinnickinnick rivers meet, and the people. We further acknowledge the grave evil colonialism introduced to these lands through genocide as well as slavery, but also via racist and xenophobic beliefs, laws, and practices that continue to inflict harm upon Black, brown, and indigenous lives. We honor those who have lived and do now at these intersections of identity and experience and are committed to the active dismantling of white supremacy. Once again, thank you. And then just have a few announcements, upcoming events and things like that. First is, of course, we have books for sale by Rachel and Angela, so I hope you'll visit the bookstore after this if you have not already had a chance. By Emily Iguike, who's the current and is the inaugural Milwaukee Poet Laureate, first ever to hold that position. So he's super excited to see who will be the next. So join us again. That's next Saturday at 2 p.m. downtown at the Central Library in Centennial Hall. The week after that, on Wednesday, May 29th, we'll host a reading here at 7 p.m. with Dara Berwa-Dixon and KP Kajiboski, which will be real good. 7 p.m., Wednesday the 29th. And then Dara is also leading a workshop, Dividing Your Time All the Time, Ways to Incorporate Your Desire to Write into Any Time. And that's going to be the evening before from 6 to 8 p.m. Tuesday the 28th. So workshop on the 28th, there's still space, and reading on the 29th. So Youth Poet Laureate Finals on Saturday, and then the following Wednesday, fantastic reading right here. Okay, one more thing too, because then the week after that, on Thursday, June 6th, we're hosting Fred Moten, who will be accompanied by Brandon Lopez on bass, and that'll be a tremendous performance. And then there will also be a reading by Ken Taylor to kick things off that evening. So that's Thursday, June 6th. Okay. And more things happening besides, but I'll leave it to you to, inquire or find our newsletter or our website. It's out there. Okay. Now it's going to be my great pleasure to introduce Angela Voras-Hills and Rachel Galvin, which I will do. I'm going to introduce them both at the same time, kind of put their works in conversation. We'll see, But it's a real pleasure, and Angela will read first, and then Rachel. And at one point in Uterotopia, Rachel Galvin's latest book of poems, she quotes Lisa Robertson, quote, "The poem is a hormone." And both of the poets joining us this evening leave their lines coursing through us. Theirs is a fully embodied verse that at once regulates and unsettles us. Chemical and alchemical transmissions, we receive messages that are impelled to motion, marked by agile shifts of thought and image, traveling through interconnected frames of experience from the deeply personal and close to the national and the global, on all of these existing on a continuum. Through ferocity and tenderness, poems always characterized by the deft movement of, quote, a dancer's unmistakable ankle, to borrow from Rachel Galvin. But amidst the motion, both Galvin and Voras-Hills manage moments of sometimes serene and sometimes devastating stillness, of presence in and with each image, moment, and place. The surreal reality of the world we share, where, quote, the seasonal fires fill our lungs, where human beings are moved, quote, like tender commodities, like bags of chips, like hand grenades. As Tracy Brimhall notes of Angela Voras-Hills' Louder Birds, which I think applies to my mind equally well to both poets, quote, though these poems take on difficulties and even tragedies, I am consoled by the wisdom in every line that asks unflinchingly what it means to make a life in such precarious and miraculous bodies. Or, if I may slightly amend Ilya Kaminsky, that's a lot of latitude to take, but writing about Uterotopia, quote, when grief comes, as it always does in our world, these poets offer us their music as a balm. Please join me in welcoming Angela Voras-Hills, followed by Rachel Galvin.
Thank you, Mike. Am I at a good distance from this microphone? Thank you. All right. Okay. I'm going to start a timer here because I am notoriously terrible at knowing how much time I've been talking. Usually I'm like, 3 poems? It must be done now. Going to read a couple of poems from Louder Birds and then some stuff from my new project that I'm working on. I'm just going to get started. Is there, for when I switch, is there a... Oh, okay. Does that just go into my phone? Okay, sounds good. I probably should have figured that out before I stood up here. Okay. Anyway, here we are, preserving. I can spend a whole winter in the summer of these lemons if they're covered in enough salt. Trucks are salting the roads so I can drive. Men salt the earth so I can walk without falling. When I fall, I catch myself with my face. When I fall, I go to the hospital to make sure the baby is still alive. There are so many small things to worry about in a large way. How much coffee should I drink? For every bean ground, someone is having sex or a child is starving. How do I know? Because I'm always reading warning labels or watching children pick dandelions near the slide. Except they are never dandelions, but toads. And the children pick them up and throw them into the pond by the handful, believing they are frogs. And we can't blame them for not knowing what swims, what sinks, what floats. In honor of Mother's Day tomorrow, I'm trying to read some motherly poems, so brace yourself, that's what's about to happen. On my way home, a great horned owl sits in the window of a silo along the highway. The foundation of the barn is now rubble, its boards salvaged. My mother has scraped and painted the wood into plant stands. On the other side of the highway, flames chew clean to the steel skeleton of a sedan, its body barely identifiable. Firemen stand close with the hose, but no water comes through. There's no ambulance. The lake has recently frozen over. Yesterday, firemen gathered on it, jumped hard to collapse the shell, and fell through. Each body tall in a black, dry suit, then only a watery hole where they'd stood. The mother of one of the men watched in the snow beside me. Just then, my son was in biology class. But what he was learning about the body, I don't know. Controlled burn. The doe ran into the road, flipped over our hood, and dragged her back legs across the highway into woods. The same day, they were killing a man in Oklahoma who wouldn't die. They were deciding when to try again, and men in masks and bright orange suits set fire to the marsh, the burning flesh of milkweed and switchgrass. We are told to be fruitful. We are told to rejoice. The next day, a hospital bed is set up in the front room of the farmhouse, whose roof might collapse at any minute, as though the heavens are aware of the weight of a minute, as though each minute responds solely to the sky. It's illegal to follow an injured deer into woods with a gun. But is it okay to tell a child about heaven if you don't believe it exists? Yes, sing the chorus frogs, who'd burrowed into the heart of the marsh to escape the flames. No, hisses the body of a vole squashed flat, perfectly filling a crack in the blacktop. All right, this title is in German. The title is Muss es sein, es muss sein, which is must it be, it must be. It's a title of a John Wilde painting. Muss es sein, es muss sein. Because the moon is a wafer bleeding beneath my tongue, and the desert is still sleeping, it must be. Tomorrow stands with its toes at the edge of a volcano, pouring a red mess of life from its stomach into the earth's pit. If the day's not picked apart, first by the bills of louder birds, I will tear into it like bread. This is how the rhythm of the earth's core will continue beating. Yes, it must be this light in my hair or the moon's muted halo through which the stars swim like minnows in a bait shop tub. It must be the weight of my face in my hands or the weight of the body hanging from the meat hook, watching with hollow eyes, waiting for a slip of the blade to release it. In the beginning. The names we create for the people we build of sticks and mud and snow. The houses we fashion for them to live in. The weather they must survive. All of it slipping. The baby we implant in the dirt womb of a stick woman. The fetus slipping. The huts we build on riverbeds, and the mud pies we force into babies' mouths, the tongue slipping. Lullabies in which we swaddle them, rocking boughs in the wind and the breaking. We must build a shelter, collect scrap and wood, blankets to save the bodies. Imagine trees, cut the limbs, rebuild the bridges. Trust the sun to hold us and not shine too keenly. To keep still as we gather buckets of water, the surface rippling with heat. We will feed it to the people. We will wash ourselves in light. All right, so I'm going to switch gears. I mean, kind of. It's a very different project, but you'll notice lots of similar themes, I'm sure. So I'm nervous to set this up for myself on my phone and keep my timer going simultaneously. So I'm just going to talk about the things, and it's fine if I don't use the projector, as long as, sorry to go through the hassle. I'm just nervous I'm going to stand up here and not figure it out. So the new book I'm working on is called The House in the Middle. And it takes its title from a PSA in the 1950s called The House in the Middle, in which a very official man from the Civil Defense Administration tells housewives that if they keep their houses clean enough, their families will survive a nuclear attack. So it's my favorite thing. So the book really talks a lot about relationships between fear and motherhood and consumerism. It talks a lot about the suburban American family kind of from the 50s going forward. And there's like a lot of like weird sexualization of Cold War propaganda and et cetera. So that's where I'm heading, FYI. All right. Lee Merlin, Miss Atomic Bomb, 1957. Standing in nothing but sand and sky, phone poles erect in the distance. Even through black and white, desert air burns your eyes. In one shot, elbows bent, hands behind her head, pin her hair up from the nape of her neck. The other, her arms explode into clouds. You've never met her, but recognize that smile, the fluff of what covers her body, how close the bomb sits to her skin. The smallest thing. When Haim reveals his atome in Cannes, it's the smallest possible thing a woman can wear on the beach, until days later in Saint-Tropez, Louis Rieur creates a suit with only 30 square inches of fabric, a series of triangles connected by string. He hires skywriters, boasts, "It's not tiny if it can't fit through a wedding ring. A thing so small only a nude dancer will model it." He calls it explosive, names it Bikini, after Bikini Atoll in the Marshall Islands, where 5 days earlier, the US began testing atomic bombs, leaving a layer of snow that would radiate into and out of the islanders' bodies, particles that would strip them of their homes. So, one of the images we're missing here, because I am nervous, is I became really obsessed with these photos of mannequins that are set up in these domestic everyday situations in this like made up suburban town in the 50s that they like the government created this town called Survival Town with just like empty houses, and they set up these mannequins doing like everyday stuff. And I went down a really awesome rabbit hole of looking at these pictures, and I have written some poems about the mannequins in their situations, and then also started to wonder, like, what would mannequins be doing today in everyday situations if there was a survival town created now? So some of these are ekphrastic poems based on images, and some are today poems. The Other Woman. After a photo of mannequins awaiting the 1953 atomic bomb test blast. If it weren't for the monochrome, we would know if her hair is white or blonde. We're left to speculate. She could be his mother, but her skin tells no stories, smooth as plaster. Sitting beside the man, her arm hooked into his, she looks down at concrete, cold beneath her feet, bare toes pointed as though perpetually in heels. She is sleek, strong, has the same body as the man's wife. We know the dark-haired woman to his right is his wife because the toddler is on her lap, and by the way she looks longingly at the man's face as though he might stop the bomb, sweep fallout from the front porch, throw a steak on the grill, and laugh about this over martinis. He's reaching out for her hand, or maybe the toddler's, whose sharp features make him look like an anti-cherub, a mannequin. The adults wear bathrobes, nightgowns, pajamas, but the toddler is fully dressed in overalls, striped shirt, sneakers. This is how the men stomach detonating the pre-dawn bomb. The boy is unlovable. Except that he's propped onto his mother's lap, nobody touches him. He is completely still, staring at the planks of the basement shelter walls. In the couple's eyes, there is hope. They believe this is only a test. The other woman's gaze suggests otherwise. Her face self-reflecting, you can see in her eyes she has a past that, if she could, she'd detach herself from the man, push her palms together, and pray. The mannequin leaves the hospital for the last time happy. Because time's up. It's been 48 hours, and who wants to sleep longer than that in a bed they've bled in? Rainfall shower head less impressive, the mannequin sits at the bed's edge, coffee in one hand, daughter's hand tugging the other. The mannequin hasn't started crying yet, can't fully grasp what happens next. The gaping and chapping, yes, but not the huge imbalance of love, like a photographer unable to capture the whole of a landscape, focusing on the mountain, the lake, the trees, never doing justice to the colors, unable to fit it all in one frame. Her husband leans in the doorway, swinging the car seat with one hand, new baby bundled, strapped in. The weight of everything she's about to leave plunges like an anchor to her feet. Cold pizza in the trash, the last first bath, the palpable smell of blood, bleach, baby soap. The car is running, her hair is wet, everyone she loves is alive. The mannequin refreshes the Facebook mom group while sitting on the toilet. A pregnant woman has been reading, "Childbirth sounds awful. Bringing home baby is terrifying." She wants someone to tell her it's not. Someone say it's beautiful. And they do. 97 comments gushing about the beauty, assuring her, yes, it's hard, but you'll only remember the joy of those first days. They go so fast. The mannequin has had enough babies to mostly remember the awful, the weight of body after body escaping her own. She can barely read the comments without feeling cheated out of forgetting, a dense pressure between her legs. So she scrolls past them. Another mom wants recommendations for a nutritionist. Her husband won't let their toddler eat sugar, not even in fruit, and her toddler is losing so much weight so fast now that he's weaning, and that's as far as the mannequin gets before the door bursts open and a photo appears in her Facebook feed, and it's her baby a year ago, and here's her baby today, and she sees he was beautiful. Baby on the duvet, stretching in his new skin, now wobbling in on chubby legs, such terrible, awful beauty. Two months before my son leaves for Belgium, we visit the zoo. And a few months before that, the airport is bombed. I get message, am I letting him go? And maybe I'm to blame because I never told them I'd once caught him running on the roof of our third floor, that he was once hit so hard by a car his shoes flew from his feet into air. A story I heard as his friends joked about the lady who'd hit him, who'd cried and hugged him in the road, making sure he was okay. Or when, just 3 days before the bombing, a high school kid scrawled plans to shoot everyone on a bathroom stall. And so, 2 months before my son boards a plane to Belgium, we feed giraffes, and he poses with peacocks. He wants to see reptiles and primates. His sister wants elephants, crocodiles, never stops running until she sees a baby kangaroo. We all stop and watch him hop around his mother, who lays on the concrete floor, bored. He cleans her ear, jumps on her head to engage her in play, and she swats him away. He's already half her size, but clearly still a baby. He doesn't give up until finally she stands, and I say, I think he'll climb into her pouch. My son doesn't believe that Joey will fit, and I tell him he will fit. And then an illusion. The pouch, 1 minute, tucked against the kangaroo's belly, stretches, touches the ground as the Joey climbs in head first, shuffles and turns, settling in. After that, there's little to see. Black paws peek from the belly. The mother nibbles her fingers, drags her baby toward a food bowl, and I follow her eyes down the dark corridor toward the metal door bursting open, the light blasting in, my daughter running out into it. After genetic testing, the mannequin lays naked on the operating table. There's a quote from Sylvia Plath's The Munich Mannequins. Perfection is terrible. It cannot have children. Sterile hum and blur, more blue than white. Doctor nurse mumble disposable, shuffle of the pad beneath her body, the whisper of dance goes on bare floor, clatter clank, the surgeon takes everything she can live without, breasts, uterus, ovaries, part of her colon. It is not enough. She asks them to remove throat, pancreas, liver, her brain, where memories begin to fray. Her body may as well be broken down to the flesh-colored pieces that carry no risk, a stack of limbs that might still be of use to someone. This is my final poem. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. My mother, the mannequin. Of course, before me, my mother was a mannequin. Most photos destroyed per her request, jeans pulled too tight around her waist, shoulder pads unbearable, eyeshadow blue to her brows, perm too tight. I still see her though, just like that, and pushing the lawnmower through the backyard ditch in dirty white sneakers, brushing barbecue sauce on chicken at the grill, sobbing at the kitchen table because the girl cut her hair too short. I should have taken photos and hidden them of her singing to ABBA in the neon light of the bar, shooting arrows at a dough target in the basement, holding that bow steady. Now we take pictures all the time. Here we are making candy, all the recipes her mother made. And here we are making pierogi like my great-grandma on Christmas Eve. In each photo, she wears a dark scarf around her head. It trails long behind her, tethering her to the earth. Thank you.
Hello, good evening. Oops. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you everyone for being here tonight. This is such a special place at Woodland Pattern. It's absolutely magical. I don't know any other place like it. So it's always exciting to be here and to hear your poems tonight. We have so many resonances between the things that we're thinking about. So yeah, we have to talk more after. So I'm going to read some poems from a book that I published last year called Uterotopia. And I'm just going to dive in. So the first poem is called Little Death. Little Death. When a man traps a fish, he removes the hook from its side, and once it has beaten its fright into the wooden boat with its slaps, he will clutch the fish to his chest and hold it as it struggles. He will hold it in the tender air. He will hold its tail as if it were his dance partner's waist and gaze into the fish's face for minutes. When a man seizes a fish, he soothes it, caresses its body tip to tip while it thrashes bloody against his bare chest. He will clasp the fish with one hand like a newborn and hush its gasping with the other. With love, he will tuck it under his chin so he can feel its heartbeat in the insistent heat that hangs above the water. Remember, when a man captures a fish, he will seduce it while he slaughters it. The strength of his love can't be simulated. The sound of the green water can't be simulated. He will kiss the wheezing gills. His kisses can't be simulated. He will hold it as it struggles. That little death, he will hold it in the tender air. So the painting on the cover of this book was made by a friend of mine named Voras-Hills, who's a wonderful, wonderful painter. She has a solo show up in New York right now. And we've known each other for a long time. I wrote some poems in this book in response to her work. So it was really exciting for me when she said yes to letting her painting appear on the cover. I think it's what I like best about the book. So I'm going to read a poem that's dedicated to her. You'll hear her name in the poem. The poem's called Fine Arts, and it's also written after a poem by W.H. Auden called Musée des Beaux-Arts that you might be familiar with. Fine Arts. About women, she's never wrong, the young painter. How well she understands their predicament, how they must resemble bright red poppies while someone else watches them eat or take off their coat or just walk down the street. How, when the old men are passionately waiting for them to bend and reveal their cleavage, there must always be girls who are still children, who do not at all want it to happen, strolling by a pond at the edge of the wood. She never forgets that it keeps on happening anyway in a corner, some humdrum place where men get on with their lives and their locker room pranks, scratching their balls in the ears of devoted dogs. In Vera Ilyatova's Softly, Softly, for instance, how two girls grab hands and turn away when they see the body lying in blood. A third in a blue scarf may have heard the screaming or heard the silence after, but she did not know what to do. The sun went on shining as it had to, on the girls disappearing into the grass, disappearing into the river, disappearing into the desert. And the indigo blur of a neck elegantly turned away belonged to someone who might have seen something but had things to do and went on with their day. Corpse pose. Pretend you are dead and we will eat you. My 4-year-old nieces insist I lie still and close my eyes. Pretend you're really dead. They make munching sounds while pretending to eat my torso. And then S grabs her doll, saying, I'm going to eat this baby. At night, I look into the mirror and whisper, hello, baby. Pretend you're dead and begin chewing. At the Hyewon Healing Center in South Korea, you can practice your own death in the company of others, write your own obituary, and give it a trial run. Among candles and chrysanthemums, you may say prayers, put on a yellow or white burial shroud, and the envoy from the other world will nail you into a casket for 10 dark minutes. You may photograph yourself with your coffin. When M's parents brought him for a grave viewing in Rockaway Beach so he could admire their fine vista and see his own grave with a view, he waited till his parents had just faded from view and then pissed on his own grave with gusto. An 800-year-old churchyard reclines under the rotting apples in Oliver's orchard. Toddlers grab green, yellow, red apples with glee, a wanton bite here, toss it away, bite there, toss it away. Child becomes apple, becomes child. The young doctor jokes, "We're gonna put you in the juicing machine. We'll make Fred juice. How about that? We'll drink you up." To which the 5-year-old Fred replies, "I'm not an apple," but we all know he is. The Met was evacuated when Roger threw ashes white as anthrax into the orchestra pit. Ashes, he later said, were the remains of a friend whom he wanted to scatter within the houses of music so he could listen forever, a tender dismemberment as remembrance, with the Met as 9th stop on his opera tour. Trying to lighten the mood, I told Terry they would never be able to vacuum all of him up. Twice today I've seen squirrel carcasses mashed into the ground by cars, fur like small flags, grave markers. It is the 11th year of the war against the drug cartels. At least 150,000 people have died. A girl paints a second mouth made of marigolds on the side of her face. Decapitated, disappeared, buried in clandestine graves, thrown in garbage dumps. Only chins and hair visible, women wearing skeleton masks march in remembrance of the 6 women killed every day near Juarez, reduced to ashes, drowned in sewage canals. The lady who cuts the umbilical cord watches over their bones. My 4-year-old nieces are playing with a doll they call Aunt Sophia. Aunt Sophia falls off the 3rd-story balcony and says, "Ouch." She's taken to the hospital and receives new legs, new arms, and a new head. Aunt Sophia falls off the balcony again and falls off the balcony and falls off. Aunt Sophia falls off the balcony again, and the lady who cuts the umbilical cord watches over her bones. I'm going to add something into my playlist here. You read a poem about very small things, about the bikini poem, so I'm going to read a poem about very small things as well, called Red Armor. And there's mention at the end of the poem of an artist who's not named, but it's Cecilia Vicuña. Red Armor. A man crafts the smallest sushi in the world from 1 grain of rice, a tiny piece of nori wrapped around a shred of sea urchin. He says a woman cried for over an hour when she saw this small sushi. It was just so cute. The ratio indicating the duration of the weeping to the size of the sushi is bewildering. Sometimes I can't tell if my neighbor upstairs is crying. As I listen to her outpouring, I try to discern whether it's giddy giggling or lament. I change my mind every few minutes. Her state of excitement is perhaps both. She must wonder this about me too sometimes. Should you punch a Nazi, yes or no? Should you punch a girl sitting at a bar, yes or no? If you're the girl sitting at the bar, will you laugh when you tell the story about how a guy you didn't even know walked up and punched you? I turn over my lipstick and look at the label. All this time, I had been reading Red Amour as Red Armor. I suppose more than amour, I needed armor on my mouth. If you are the girl sitting on the bar, should you punch the guy back? In the 1960s, the Viet Cong guerrilla girls who came to visit Chile looked like angels, said the artist, whose glasses read Verdad. Some were snipers or officers, some were spies. Around here, you can't make a sound without someone seeing it. In honor of Mother's Day and every day, I'm going to read a slightly longer poem that's called Well, No One Ever Said Breeding Was Easy. And this poem is an abecedarian poem, so each stanza starts with A, B, C, etc., except it's braided, so it goes A, Z, B, Y, C, X, and so forth. So if you want to, you can try to listen for where we are in the poem and how soon it's going to be over. It's called, Well, No One Ever Said Breeding Was Easy. Attempts for years to have a child, gives up, adopts a child, gets pregnant. Zipping your lips is what they call it when you pretend it doesn't hurt. Budgets for 4 rounds of IVF, has 3 miscarriages and 1 healthy baby. You should just adopt, people say. Ceases taking depression meds so as to conceive and grows suicidal. X-rays are what they call it when they squirt you full of iodine to check your tubes. Delivers a stillborn baby and then miscarries. Wage gap is what they call it when women make 77 cents for every dollar earned by men. Eclampsia is what they call the seizures that land her in the hospital in her 8th month. Visa officers block pregnant women at the border for fear of what they call anchor babies. Freezes 6 embryos just in case and then gets pregnant by accident. Uterine cancer is what they call it when you're exposed to toxic chemical waste. Geriatric mother is what the doctors call you when you're pregnant over 35. 35. 35. Transvaginal probes are what they put inside you when you seek an abortion in 27 states. And I wrote this before Roe versus Wade was struck down, so there'd be some updates to make. Has an abortion, has a miscarriage. Senile vaginitis is what the doctors call it when you're in menopause. I lost at least 1 book, maybe 1.5, to raising my kids, she says. Runs a marathon while bleeding freely, blood staining her leggings. Just home from the hospital with her newborn when her wife leaves her, quits her job, drops off each kid with a different relative, and drives away. Keeps trying, 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 keeps trying. Pregnancy wastage is what they write on her chart, meaning her baby is stillborn. Laughs out loud when she discovers she's pregnant at 50. Other women are her main source of information about what to do. Married for 15 years and can't convince her husband to have a child. Not expecting her period, she wads up toilet paper in her panties, but still bleeds through. Never wanted to have kids, and now she's stepmother to 3. Mother makes her sleep in the cowshed until her period is over. Ovaries are hyperstimulated by IVF drugs, and she gains 15 pounds in 1 week. Luxury items are how tampons and pads are classified for taxation in 33 states. Everything in here is true. Pretends everything is just swell as she miscarries during a job interview. Keeps quiet when people call him the mother, even though he birthed their baby after transitioning. Questions her choice to have a child to strangers in bars for years. Jails and prisons in the US force women to work 21 hours for a box of pads and 27 hours for a box of tampons. Resolves to have a baby on her own and meets a new partner when 7 months pregnant. Incompetent cervix or inadequate pelvis is what they like to say to lay the blame on you. Suffers the loss of 1 twin in utero, and the second stays in intensive care for a year. Hostile uterus is what they call it when your body blocks sperm like a champ. Tells no one she's pregnant, not even her partner, till the abortion is over. Good news, it hurts like hell, but I swear you won't even remember it later. Used a donor egg and smiles every time someone says her son looks like her. Fair practice is what they call it when she doesn't get promoted because they suspect she might have another child. Vacuuming the eggs out of her ovaries leaves her aching when she wakes. Exhausted by people mistaking her for the nanny because she and her son don't have the same skin color. Why don't you just adopt, people ask. Decides to give up her newborn for adoption because she wants to finish high school. X-rays of her fallopian tubes hurt more than expected returning to work after the procedure. C-sections mean that the doctor gets paid more and they're in and out in an hour. You should just think about adopting, people advise. Buys food, but no tampons this month because she's too broke. Zygotes are overrated, says her friend with no kids. Adoption isn't an option. She can't opt to adopt because she's broke. Too broke. She's broke. So this next poem is called Tender Commodities. And I wrote, when I find it, I wrote this after, you probably learned about this too, that when the policy of family separation was going into being at the border, and children were being detained and put in cages, and the official government term for what was happening to families, they were deleted families. And I saw in the news about an old Walmart in Texas that was being used to house detained children. So they were being fenced in inside this old Walmart. And Walmart isn't mentioned in the poem, but that's the background. I mean, it's not mentioned by name. Tender commodities. People migrate by crowded bus or by crowded car. People cling to a freight train or an inflatable raft. No blankets, no diapers, no pads, no formula, no food. People travel by foot and travel by night, and they wait. A boy falls off a freight car and breaks both arms. People wait in encampments for their children, and they wait. Caged children's bodies are wrapped in mylar, like tender commodities, like bags of chips, like hand grenades. They wait for frozen cheese sandwiches as snow falls like ash. They wait all day to play in a fenced-in courtyard, while around the block the restaurants keep filling with people and emptying and filling. And I think about the work it takes to prepare those meals and serve them. Crops grown, produce picked, food shipped, linens bleached, tables bussed, credit cards charged. A weary swirl of finance, crowds around the waste. So many items, so very many items and items. I think about who's making, who's buying, who's using all the items. Tender commodities, like the bodies of detained children. Children sleep in a retail store, cuddled by ghost commodities, nestled in rows upon rows of chain link fence, fluorescent lights. All day, all night, agents and cameras, bed pads on the concrete and bed pads on the concrete, and wet wipes and wet wipes and wet wipes instead of showers, and bags of chips and bags of chips and bags of chips and bags of chips. It's not going to get cheerier for a couple minutes, so this one's called One Sugar or Two. In Chicago, urban farmers have such a surplus of eggs, they don't even barter, they just give them away. On the table is served a Dutch baby made out of 6 eggs, 8 tablespoons of butter, little flour, little milk, pinch of nutmeg, a Dutch baby right out of the oven. Give me a piece of that baby, he says. Put some hot sauce on that baby, he says. I'm reminded of a man in Vermont pulling a stillborn sheep out from its moaning mother. The one born alive has cords wrapped around it, spindly legs that seem impossible, but within a week the lamb is playing King of the Mountain atop a heap of dung. Sheepskin on the sofa, sheepskin on the floor. I think of my friend's poem about the futility of writing poems about birthing animals, about pulling anything from death into life. Kids before guns, the teenager yells into the mic to a crowd of 500,000 at the Capitol. A gun without bullets is sold out of a truck for $200 to pay for dinner. With bullets, you can afford dessert. We don't actually need assault weapons to kill deer, a child hunter comments. This morning, high school students across the country walked out to protest gun violence, while at the same moment, a man walked into a Florida high school and shot a student. In Florida, almost all manatees bear scars from boat propellers. One is nicknamed No Tail. Everyone is especially sad when a boat kills a manatee that has what they call a milk-dependent baby. Hostile uterus. Hostile uterus. What do I carry? A glowing orb, an orbit, an orifice, this uterus, this bright bulb. Yes, that's right. It's a uterus light bulb. It sits on my hips like a lid on a ceramic sugar bowl marked cyanide. It is texting madly while waiting at a bus stop, watching the wind pick up and the hail begin. It is hailing the bus driver. It is driving the bus. My uterus light bulb is driving the bus. Resistance. So I wrote this poem thinking about the artwork of Anselm Kiefer, who made huge-scale installations, sculptures, paintings, thinking about the Holocaust, World War II, and Germany's role in it. As I was working on the poem, Russia invaded Ukraine and started bombing the cemeteries in Ukraine. Why do you bomb the cemetery, right? And I was reminded of Cesar Vallejo, the great Peruvian poet, who's really just one of the most powerful poets of the last 100 years, wrote about the German forces bombing graveyards in Spain during the Spanish Civil War. So there's a little epigraph from Cesar Vallejo that was translated by Valentino Januzzi and Michael Smith. And it goes like this in English. The graveyards were bombed, and the immortal dead, of vigilant bones and everlasting shoulder, on their graves the immortal dead, unfeeling, seeing, hearing, so low the evil, so dead the vile aggressors, resumed their unfinished mourning. And that's the epigraph from Vallejo. Resistance. On the bed, a stain in the shape of a state or a city. No, it's shaped like a small town that belongs to one country, invaded by another country, now reclaimed by the first country, although the inhabitants never hold citizenship in any sovereign nation. Their town batted back and forth, 2 dogs killing a mouse. Remember the bombed graveyard next door, headstones and shards. Even the dead are not safe. The dead are not safe. They're not safe. They're not the dead. The bed sits in a room filled with guilt vinegar, rust and shame, vinegar, frustration, dead stalks, grayed out honeycombed heads, women made of wire. A militarized border striates the room. Grave markers drape over the lead bed. Even the dead are not safe. The dead are not safe. They're not safe. They're not the dead. The women who sleep in the bed build boats of rust to sail on a sea of rust, amid scum and froth, mud and lead, breathing camphor, breathing vinegar, breathing the burnt smudges where water used to be, ash, still ash, dirt encrusted in cracks, ash, boats built of rust to sail on a sea of rust, ash, words scratched in flesh, words etched where sky had been, ash, boats laden with refuse, boats of scrap, a horizon scratched into the sky's husk, ash, waves etched in rust, ash on wire, ash on rust, water-stained scraps jut through waves of wire, waves of ash, the sea burnt and cracked, the sea needs camphor, the sea needs ash, rub camphor on the sea, its lacerations and sores, the sea is sore, so sore, the sea is sore, rust is growing, encroaching, rub camphor on the sea, blisters of the sea, let boats of ash seal on the sea of blisters, let the boats scrape across the sea of wire, sea of rust, sea of ash, let the boats scratch waves of wire, waves of ash, let the boats scrape and scratch, for the dead are not safe, the dead are not safe, they're not safe, they're not the dead. And the last poem I'll read is called Meat and Honey. This is also inspired by a work of art that I saw by Damien Hirst. It's described in the poem, Meat and Honey. Heavy rubber curtains the doorway of a human-sized butterfly terrarium. We're instructed to proceed at a steady pace amidst insects gorging on honey. If the creatures had been houseflies, they would have been hideous, reminding me of my own corpse rotting. None of the rainbow covenant that's bundled into the butterfly. What if they were small foxes or cats? Maybe their lifespan is too long, but it would make a hell of a durational piece. It's impossible to think of how many lives are happening amidst the wriggling filaments, the legs with a single claw. Impossible to think of those that have happened and ended, who are hungry, who are not at home, who are broken, who are falling right now. When I first discovered orgasms, I walked through the world in a haze, wondering why that wasn't what everyone does all day long. How can anyone talk of anything else? Now I think the same of death. How can anyone think of anything else? I'm terribly attached to my own consciousness. I'm at home in the scaffolding of my mind, the taste of my knees, the smell of my armpits, the beats my feet keep and those they don't, my compound eye, my proboscis. I imagine losing this. Imagine someone else passing through the rubber curtains, watching me feed on sugar water and spin a silk mat, shrug off my exoskeleton and eat it like an edible overcoat and fall to the floor behind a trailing plant. It's devastating. And the crimson, the orange, the yellow, the inexplicable gold chrysalis make a difference. Little angels, little widgets, pumping fluid into crumpled wings until they stiffen. Photographs are forbidden, but they would be useless anyway. The point is to move and sweat, losing our signatures, like a dancer's unmistakable ankle, or how she lifts a shoulder with curiosity as one might lift an eyebrow. My body inclines toward another. I sip the air with my tubular sucking organ. I am a question made of meat and honey. Thank you.
Rachel and Angela, thank you so much. That was incredible. And thank you all for being here. And I just want to say, have a great night, and also feel free to stick around and enjoy the good company after. Good night, everyone. Thanks.